sort of step back at like what we've achieved, we're like, wow, this is like, couldn't have imagined doing this without you guys. And it's like, it's only possible because there's this like sort of a collection of energy all going into it all at once.
I think just like the weird thing to me is kind of the intersection between like church, club, and cult. And like, you know, trying to not say that you're a church, trying to not say that you're a cult, or like, you know, you pick one and you eliminate the other two. It's always hard because like a lot of the language is very similar. But they all do serve that, like, you know, that belonging need that we all have.
Yeah. I mean, you know, what makes a cult is a great question. And I don't have a clear answer for that.
Technically, I think cult is like the larger umbrella. I think all religions are in some way a cult, but not every cult becomes a full religion. I think that's my understanding of it as it is now. But I mean, I could also be completely wrong.
Yeah, I think you're generally right. I mean, I think from what I've seen, cults typically are like, if you can have a group of people who like sort of believes something with like a shared sense of belief that's like fixed to a degree that it's not going anywhere, or like it's like sort of ingrained to a degree that it like is not easily changed or disrupted, even in the face of information that seems to conflict that belief. That's like a pretty good way to know that something is like a cult. But I think, you know, honestly, like my personal take on this is that like all of these things are all blending into each other. And this is like, at MyCo, we use this word like co to talk about groups of people. We now kind of call them clubs, but like originally it was just co. Because a co, it's just like a group of people, because what we see
co-op,
is that,
cooperating,
like,
cooperation.
Right. Because it's like companies are blending into communities, are turning themselves into communities. Communities are turning themselves into collectives. Collectives are turning themselves into co-ops. And like really, they're like, we think in like 20 years, and cults are part of that too. The cults start with a CU, so we don't include it in the thing. But they're also a part of it as well.
It's like it's like the Pokemon that doesn't actually fit the naming structure of the evolution chain there.
Right, exactly. But it's like clearly they're like actually all of them are cults, technically speaking. But it's just, yeah, it's one of those things where like it's like they're all blending into each other, because it's all just like groups of people learning off of the way that other groups of people have done things previously, whether it's like a company learning from how collectives work and how they're able to organize really efficiently, or communities learning how companies make money and are able to organize themselves that way, or collectives learning how co-ops work and the way that like fair ownership, you know, can help sort of like maintain these relationships and create a really like sturdy culture and things like that. They're all like, it's all just like them learning off of each other and like learning what works and what doesn't when you want to get a group of people to work together, you know, use the internet. And I think because of the way the internet works, we're like going to see, you know, over the next, like 20 years, we're going to see, I think, a big sort of explosion of these groups and people, you know, being a part of them, launching them, spending a lot of time in them, and really just like focusing much more on like the group relationships rather than, you know, like personal relationships. I feel like social media up until now was so much of it was about like your social graph in a very like specific sense of like, I know X people, or I'm related to X people, or I follow X people. Whereas now it's like, I don't know, like you and I, for instance, right? Like, I don't know that much about you. We're like, you know, but we like are members of Mochi together. And that membership, that co-membership, like automatically creates a sort of like base relationship between us, you know? And so it's like the instead of us having to be connected one-to-one, we can just be connected to these like hubs that bring many people together. And I think that's like something we're going to start seeing a lot more of. And then as that happens, like they're just going to learn, you know, like how do you get groups of people to do things, whatever their goals happen to be.
So would you say this is kind of like an evolution of social networking? Or is it like more, would you say it's more of an evolution of that, or like more of an evolution of like, you know, the church group, the, you know, the friend groups?
I think they're all the same. Like, I think they're all like, all of those things are eventually going to become different permutations of each other, because they were ultimately just groups of people coming together for a particular goal, right? And sometimes that goal was making money, sometimes it wasn't. Sometimes the goal started being making money, but you eventually became friends. If you at your like office, at your job, you usually, like, if you're in the office, you'll like have groups of friends, right? And many of my best friends in New York City are people who I met through consensus, right? Where we originally were there, quote unquote, as like a job, but friendship sort of arose naturally out of that. Or, so it's like, I think, have been operating for such a long time under this guise of like, companies are this one thing where it's like a corporation and it's this, and then you have like this other thing, which is like groups of friends, and that they're like actually very different, when at their core, they're actually very much the same. The only difference is like, what are people there to do, right? Like, what is the purpose? What are the goals? What are the values? But that like their needs are ultimately like very similar, depending on what the circumstances are,
and the level of their like their business arrangements with clients or whatever.